New York Times writer Nicholas Kristof, I'm quoting you, asserts that there is you're quoting him, overwhelming evidence that centuries of racial subjugation still shape inequity in the 21st century, quote, closing quote, and he mentions, open quote, the lingering effects of slavery, close quote. And now this is Tom Sowell. If we wanted to be serious about evidence, we might compare where blacks stood 100 years after the end of slavery with where they stood after 30 years of the liberal welfare state.
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, in 1960, which would be almost 100 years after the end of slavery, 22% of black kids grew up in homes with only one parent.
Just 22%?
Yes.
4 out of 5 were in homes with both parents?
Yes. 30 years later, after the liberal welfare state, that number had more than tripled. And so I said, well, let us compare, if we can speculate on how much that 22% was due to the legacy of slavery. But we know that tripling was not due to the legacy of slavery. It was due to the legacy of a whole different set of policies. And you can look at it so many other ways. Education. Stuyvesant High School in New York, as you know, you get into only by passing a very tough exam. In 2012, the percentage of black students who had gotten into Stuyvesant High School was less than 1/10 of the percentage of black students who had gotten into Stuyvesant High School 33 years earlier.
I didn't know that.
There's Dunbar High School in Washington, which was an elite black high school for a very long time. In 1993, the number of kids out of Dunbar High School who went on to college was less than it was 60 years earlier, which would have been in the depth of the Great Depression.
So if the comparison between progress, simply the decency of
Yes.
of life available
Yes.
to people, they weren't, the families were intact and schools worked and the neighborhoods were more or less safe.
Yes.
People were able to lead decent lives. If the contrast between that world and the world we inhabit now is owing so directly to liberal policies intended, so we're told, to help African Americans, why do African Americans support the more liberal of the two parties, the Democratic Party, at the rates of 90 and more percent? Why is the first African American president so deeply committed to promoting and extending liberal policies? Why is his African American Attorney General, again, so deeply committed to affirmative action and other, why?
I don't think we could be enough hours for you to answer all of those. But to take the political thing, one of the things I discovered in the research for my book I'm currently working on is that leaders of groups that are lagging in countries around the world almost invariably have counterproductive policies for them. And it makes perfect sense, because insofar as members of lagging groups assimilate into the values and achievements of the larger society, they don't need those leaders. I mean, there's no mystery to me as to why Jesse Jackson says what he does, or Al Sharpton and others, because that benefits them, but it does not benefit the people they lead. And all the incentives are for leaders to lead people into things that don't help the people, but help the leaders.
There would be an exception for Dr. King, though, wouldn't there?
Yes, but
he
one of the things
was different because he was earliest, or what? Why? What's different about
it? Well, it's like insurgent movements in general. When an insurgency starts off, by definition, it has an uphill battle. Now, and you can look at the history of Christianity, for heaven's sake. If you're going to be a Christian in the Roman Empire, you know, before in the first century, you had a lot of grief to go through. Now, but after Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire, this is a bonanza. And there's a lot to be done. And so now you will follow policies that are the opposite of what you advocated.